Elden Ring's weapon skills were FromSoft's new big addition to the Souls-like formula, introducing single-celled gameplay and even the ability to kill a literal god within seconds. If you want to learn how to make builds that can beat the game blindfolded or straight up make you unkillable, then watch this video to find out just how overpowered weapon skills can get in Shadow of the Erdtree. I'll be doing the whole run with a character on level 150. Dropping into the graveside plane, I immediately went for all the Erdtree fragments so we can play the first chapter with a +6 blessing. Then I headed to the Castle Ensis to get the topic of the first build, the Rellana's Cameo. Now, initially, this was a complete nothing burger, or more specifically, when I first recorded this video, because this talisman buffs stand skills after holding the stance for a couple seconds. These are the stand skills. Now, this talisman used to be shit because the time it took to activate the effect was way too long. Something particularly bad for stand skills, because the skills themselves already take up the whole attack window to activate, making this talisman completely useless for optimal gameplay. But in the 1.14 update, which dropped literally as I was recording, not only did they fix the time, but they also made the talisman give you a 45% damage bonus. What? If that didn't sink in, that is the single highest damage bonus you can get from any talisman in the game. This, alongside the speed bonus, immediately makes most of the stand skills straight up S tier. So let's go over some of them. Starting with a build that is so strong it immediately warrants an award, the Sword of Night and Flame is a straight sword with the Night and Flame stance, which is basically a drugged up version of Square Off. It's easy to tell that it's strong, but if you look further, you'll see that for some reason it scales a fucking 800 on your fire damage. Why FromSoft? You see, weapon skills have different categories defined by the type of calculation they perform. If you want a lengthy nerd explanation, here's a video by my crush. But for the jocks in the back of the class, here's a simple explanation. The weapon skills that have you winning an Olympic gold with your backflips mostly work like a bigger motion value, while the ones where you roll on the ground or summon the Wrath of God scale only off of your stats. Some skills are a mix of both calculations. This calculation stuff is done to prevent skills from doing a million damage, but for some reason, Michael Zaki just decided to not do that for the Night and Flame stats, and instead, this fire thing takes the sword's fire damage and multiplies it by 8. For the Americans in chat, that's like shooting 8 bullets at the cost of 1, and for everyone else, that basically means you're dead. Pair this attack with these talismans, these buffs, and this physic. Throw in an oil pot, and watch as your enemies... Oh, by the way, since this attack comes out really quickly, it perfectly fits a pre-boss buff routine. Like for example, the newly added Poison Perfume bottle, which allows you to poison yourself within seconds, making poison buffs much easier to use. It is really funny how we start the video with the highest damage award, something that's usually reserved for the end. You may not believe it, but better builds are coming. To find that, we'd have to tackle the Night and Flame's big weakness, which is the lack of versatility. You can only really use this weapon in one context, and that is if the boss politely lets you drop a nuclear bomb on them. But for other situations, I want to try looking at the unsheathed weapon skills. The most popular rendition of this skill is the Moonveil's Transient Moonlight, the newbie's favorite weapon. Now, unlike the Dark Souls gatekeeping community, it does not piss me off when you're having fun. What does piss me off about Moonveil users is the fact that the Moonveil is just straight up worse than the Uchigatana, because the Moonveil has 2 calculations that get this weird magic-oriented damage. Meanwhile, the normal unsheathed gets you a singular large motion value. On top of that, infusing the Uchigatana with lightning makes it so that you only have to focus on one stat, while also giving you a much more superior damage type. Here are the talismans, buffs, and stats of the build. But what's even better than that is the new Wing Stance skill, a stance ash unique to the Melody, my personal favorite weapon. The thing with the Wing Stance is that both light and heavy attacks are just straight peak. But what really deserves the award is the new heavy attack being the strongest stance skill. Well, second. This jumping lunge attack is a thrusting attack that has 251 motion value. That's the single highest motion value of all the stance ashes, meaning it synergizes the best with the Cameo. But as if they were trying to glaze the nerds, they just had to make it do piercing damage, meaning it can do counter attacks, made even easier as the skill jumps over attacks, hitting the enemy during the counter attack window. This skill just has everything going for it. So slap on these talismans, these buffs, and with these stats, you can pretty much solo the entire game with one build, landing this the most versatile build award. Now that we've unlocked the Skadu Altus, it's time to get even crazier. Since we're already taking off multiple major awards, I went into the next chapter with a goal: to find a build that can trade like a bull goat with a rivers of blood, like straight up L2 spam and somehow stay alive. And I found 2 builds. Up first is found here in the Fort of Reprimand, where we can get the wing aspect, a very funny skill that replicates my actions with some others in the audience. Now, admittedly, this build isn't very impressive, but it still fits the bill of spamming one button and tanking attacks, so I'll drop the build anyway. Here are the talismans, don't forget the armor. Here are the buffs, where I also included the electrify armament spell, because with a plus 25 figure seal, you get more lightning damage than even the DLC grease. It's free damage since you want to run the God's Greatsword on heavy infusion anyways. This build does about this much damage, and it gets about a passing grade to me. But to reach the peak of this chapter, I went to grind a little bit. First is to get the Viridian hidden tier from the Furnace Golem near the Cerulean coast. This tier gives you unlimited stamina for 15 seconds. Then head on down to Mount Gelmir from the Volcano Manor to fight this ulcerated tree spirit for the Leaden Heart tier, which is commonly misunderstood as a poise increase, but to put it simply, increasing your poise is like increasing a separate health bar for when you get staggered. Now, this tier actually makes you immune to getting staggered by certain types of attacks. In situations against large attacks, it doesn't actually do anything. Now, these tiers only last between 10 to 15 seconds, so to match that, we need a skill that can really shine if you give it 10 to 15 seconds to cook. That is where the Red Bear Hunt comes in. This skill has your character do an unimpressive swiping combo, with pretty good damage and bleed buildup to go with it. The thing is, this has a really high stamina cost, and also takes a while to finish its combo, so it's not hard to find yourself getting knocked out of it, or just running out of stamina midway through. But for all of these weaknesses, the skill pays back with a ton of synergy. First up, with the Leaden Heart here, you will be ignoring all the smaller hits from taking your poise away, and you basically save poise for when the big hits happen. So combine this skill with the new Solitude set alongside the Bullgoat Talisman. The next strength is how the skill is a 4-hit combo that also spawns these little bullets that work as extra slashes. So with the Godskin Swaddling Cloth, you actually have just under enough to proc a heal every combo, which is still decently consistent for tanking. The final little strength is self-explanatory, as negating stamina consumption pretty much means you can use this skill for 15 seconds straight. That is a lot of damage. Combine that with these talismans and these buffs, and you will end up killing any boss before it kills you. Or in other words, for the 10 to 15 seconds following a Physic Flask, the Tarnished is effectively immortal. Domain expansion. Viridian Leaden Hunt. Coldest Build Award. Okay, so the reason the last build didn't win the award to take it all home is because while it is a good skill, it doesn't really align with the nature of weapon skills in Elden Ring. See, weapon skills are meant to be spammed with no regard to actual skill, and that is why I have 3 more builds to show to contend for the best skill spamming award. The first build is something that has been waiting a while for a video to be featured in, so I decided to just give it a shout out in this video. It's pretty simple. The DLC's Great Katana is currently the biggest weapon that can take blood tax. This weapon skill is a life-stealing repeating thrust, meaning it synergizes very well with the new blood-sucking crack tier. You can also wear the Ansbach set, but the difference with the Rixasha set is not big enough to sacrifice a real one. With the skills scalings, you don't need to invest into Arcane, not even for the bleed, because since the Blood Flame Blade spell doesn't add bleed buildup, it's not affected by the lower status MV of the skill, meaning you actually get more bleed buildup and damage with Keen and the spell rather than Occult. I like this setup in theory, but I can't exactly rank it as the best in any particular award. It's a little jank, but it does its job if you're patient, so it deserves that credit. The real winner of the skill spamming award is actually a tie. To get the first one, I have to talk to Dragonwife so that I could take on the quest of defeating Bale. Once I finish that, she decides I'm not good enough and leaves me the Flowerstone Gavel. Now, I think we all know that lightning is pretty good, but the only thing that is better than lightning is lightning with more buffs. The Flower Dragon Bolt is a chargeable lightning strike weapon skill that reduces a target's lightning damage resistance by 30%. Wow. Now, this skill was already good on its own, but the debuff part just makes it peak. This skill also has a really good attack animation. It's not unreasonably fast, but I never found myself uncomfortable with it. There are many times when an attack that should have hit was dodged at the perfect time. It's a really easy skill to use for the damage that you're getting. So here are the talismans, the buffs, and the stats. This weapon skill shares the top spot with an old skill that used to absolutely destroy base game speedruns. The Flame of the Redmanes is a fire-based bullet art that just throws fire in front of you. This skill is now boosted by the Freya's Greatsword, obtained after the fight in the endgame. Here's the rest of the gear, the buffs, and the skill can pretty much just explain itself with how easy it is to use. Tap the skill button and instantly do 2000 damage. It's peak. It's hard to make a definitive winner between the two of these, but to say for sure, the Flame of the Red Mains is faster and can much easily win fights, while the Flowerstone Gavel has a much higher consistent damage output. Unfortunately, it's hard to have both in the same build because they require different stats, though I do find that you won't regret choosing one over the other. But anyways, have you ever wondered if cosplay builds can actually do damage? Well, check this video out to see just how overpowered we can make cosplay builds in Elden Ring. See you there!